The evening sky painted the city in shades of orange and gold as people rushed about their lives with bags in their hands and thoughts in their heads. At the crowded bus stop stood a young woman with tangled brown hair and tired eyes. She wore an oversized jacket with holes in the sleeves and her shoes were so worn that the soles flapped each time she took a step. Her name was Claire and for the past 6 months she had wandered the streets with no place to sleep except park benches and shelters that often turned her away. She stood quietly as the crowd moved around her hoping to blend in though she knew she never truly belonged. Beside her a little girl with curly blonde hair clutched a small pink backpack shaped like a bunny. The backpack looked far too new compared to the girl's tired expression. She kept glancing around as if searching for someone who should have been there already. Her name was Lily and though she was only 6 she had already learned what it felt like to wait for people who did not always come. Claire noticed the girl standing alone and for a moment tried to look away because she had her own troubles to carry. Yet something about the way the child's small hands held onto that backpack made her pause. The crowd thinned as one bus arrived and carried most of the people away. Claire shifted her weight and glanced again. The little girl was still there, still alone, still waiting. Finally Lily turned her big blue eyes toward the young woman and spoke with surprising boldness. "You need a home and I need a mommy." The words startled Claire who blinked in confusion. She almost laughed but the sound caught in her throat. "What did you say?" she asked softly. "I said you need a home and I need a mommy," Lily repeated, her small voice filled with simple honesty that only a child could carry. Claire's heart thudded in her chest. She wanted to explain that life was not that simple, that she was not the kind of person anyone should call mother. Yet the way Lily said it made it feel like a truth written in the air. "Where is your mommy or daddy?" Claire asked, kneeling down to meet her eyes. "My mommy said she would come after work," Lily answered with a hopeful smile that faded just a little as her gaze drifted to the empty road. "But she is late. She is always late. Sometimes she forgets. Sometimes she tells me to wait and wait until I fall asleep." Claire bit her lip. She understood too well what it meant to wait for someone who never showed. She had once waited for her own mother who promised she would come back after dropping off some papers. That day never ended and Claire had spent her teenage years bouncing between strangers' houses until she finally ended up on the street. The little girl stepped closer as if she trusted the young woman completely. "You look sad," Lily whispered. "But maybe if you are my mommy you will not be sad anymore. And maybe if you are my mommy I will not have to wait here by myself." The innocence of those words pressed against Claire's chest like a heavy stone. She wanted to protect the girl but she knew the dangers of false promises. Still her hands trembled as she reached out and gently fixed the strap of Lily's backpack that had slipped down her shoulder. "What if your mommy comes and she sees me with you?" Claire asked carefully. "Then she will know that someone cares," Lily said with such confidence that Claire almost believed it. The bus stop grew quieter as the evening deepened. A streetlight flickered on, casting a pale glow over them. Claire looked at the little girl standing so bravely by her side and felt something shift within her. She had lived so long with emptiness that she forgot what it felt like to be needed. For the first time in months she smiled. It was not a perfect smile but it was real. "All right little one," she said softly, "maybe I can wait with you until your mommy comes." Lily's eyes sparkled with joy. She slipped her tiny hand into Claire's rough and cold fingers. "See, I told you, you can be my mommy and I can be your girl." Claire held her hand and for a brief fragile moment the noise of the city faded away. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She did not know if she would still be sleeping under bridges or walking streets hungry and cold. But she knew this one truth. At that bus stop as the stars began to prick the darkening sky a little girl believed in her. And sometimes belief was enough to begin a new story. The night air grew colder as the streetlights buzzed softly above. Claire kept her hand wrapped gently around Lily's smaller hand while the little girl hummed a tune that she seemed to invent on the spot. People walked past them without pausing as if they were invisible. Claire had felt invisible for months, yet tonight someone had seen her. Not just anyone but a child with a heart so pure that it cut through every shadow Claire had built around herself. Minutes turned into nearly an hour. Claire knew that if Lily's mother had promised to come she should have been there long ago. She glanced down at the little girl whose humming grew softer until she leaned against Claire's side. The young woman felt the warmth of her small frame and something stirred inside her that had been buried for years. "Lily, do you remember your mommy's phone number?" Claire asked carefully. The girl frowned a little and then nodded. "Yes, I know it. She made me say it again and again so I would never forget." She recited the numbers slowly and proudly. Claire thought for a long moment. She had no phone of her own, and even if she wanted to borrow one from someone passing by, she doubted anyone would trust her enough to hand it over. The truth was clear. No one in this city trusted a homeless woman. She looked ragged. She looked broken. Yet here was this child who had given her more trust in 1 hour than strangers had given in years. The buses continued to come and go. Claire made a choice. She would not leave the child alone. She would wait as long as it took. She pulled her jacket tighter around them both as Lily began to drift into sleep against her arm. Hours later, a car screeched to the curb. A woman in a bright red coat stepped out, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. She looked exhausted and frantic as her eyes darted across the bus stop. When she saw Lily curled up beside Claire, her steps quickened. "Lily," the woman cried with a voice that carried both fear and guilt. She rushed forward and scooped the child into her arms. Lily stirred sleepily, then opened her eyes with a smile. "Mommy, this is Claire," she said happily. "She is my mommy too." The woman froze and her gaze shifted sharply to Claire. For a moment suspicion filled her expression. Claire raised her hands in a gesture of peace. "I found her waiting alone," Claire explained gently. "I did not want to leave her here by herself. She told me you would come." The mother held her daughter tightly, though her shoulders slowly eased. "Thank you," she said, though the words were quiet and uneasy. She glanced at Claire's torn jacket and rough appearance, and the hesitation in her voice was impossible to miss. Before Claire could respond, Lily reached out her tiny hand toward Claire. "Do not go. You need a home and I need a mommy. You both can be my mommies." The child's innocence cut through the cold night. The woman in the red coat looked torn between laughter and tears. She sighed and brushed Lily's hair back from her face. "Sweetheart, I am your mommy. But we should thank this lady for being kind." Claire smiled softly, though her chest ached. "It is all right, Lily. You already have a mother who loves you. That is what matters most." The woman gave a nod and began to guide Lily back to the car. Yet just before the door closed, Lily pulled free and ran back to Claire. She threw her small arms around her waist and whispered, "I believe in you. One day you will find a home. One day you will be a mommy too." Tears burned in Claire's eyes as she hugged the girl tightly. "Thank you, little one," she whispered. The car drove away, leaving Claire alone again under the pale glow of the streetlight. The warmth of Lily's hug lingered against her chest. She stood silently for a long time as the city rushed on. She should have felt emptier than before, yet she did not. For the first time in years she felt as if someone had handed her a tiny spark of hope. That night Claire walked back to the shelter with a new kind of determination. She no longer carried only hunger and weariness. She carried the memory of a little girl's belief. When the workers at the shelter turned her away because there were no beds, she did not break down. Instead, she sat on the steps and thought about Lily's words. "You need a home and I need a mommy." The next morning Claire woke with the sunrise and began to search for work. She asked at diners and laundromats and small shops. Most shook their heads. Some turned her away before she could speak. Yet she kept walking. Each rejection stung, yet each time she remembered Lily's voice and kept going. After a week she found a small cafe in need of someone to wash dishes. The owner was an older woman with kind eyes who did not ask too many questions. She gave Claire a chance. It was not much money, but it was enough for food and enough to save for something more. Weeks turned into months. Claire worked every shift she could. She saved every dollar she managed to keep. She slept on couches of other workers when they offered kindness. Little by little her life began to change. One evening as she walked home from the cafe, she passed the same bus stop where she had first met Lily. She stopped in her tracks as she saw the familiar pink bunny backpack. Lily was there with her mother this time. They were laughing together as they waited for a bus. When Lily saw Claire, her face lit up and she ran forward. "Claire," she shouted with joy. "Mommy, look, it is her." The woman in the red coat smiled more warmly than before. She nodded in greeting. "You again. I was hoping we might see you. Lily speaks about you often. She tells me you are her other mommy." Claire laughed softly and knelt to hug the little girl. "And how are you, Lily?" she asked. "I am good," Lily said proudly. "But I told mommy that you would find a home and be happy, and I was right, was I not?" Claire smiled, though tears glimmered in her eyes. "Yes, Lily, you were right. I have a job now and I am saving for a place to live. Your belief gave me the strength to try." The mother listened quietly and then placed a gentle hand on Claire's shoulder. "I owe you more thanks than I can ever say. That night you stayed with my daughter when I failed her. You could have walked away, yet you did not. If you ever need help, please know you have a friend in us." For a moment silence filled the air. Claire looked at Lily, who beamed up at her with pure joy. She realized then that the little girl had been right all along. She had needed a home. And though she had not become Lily's mother, she had discovered something just as powerful. She had found a reason to believe in herself again. The bus arrived and Lily waved from the window as it carried her and her mother away. Claire stood at the stop watching until the bus disappeared into the distance. Then she smiled with hope glowing inside her like a steady flame. She had once been invisible, yet a child had seen her. She had once been lost, yet a child had given her direction. She had once been empty, yet a child had given her the dream of becoming more. The story that began with one small voice at a bus stop had given birth to a future she had never dared to imagine. And in her heart Claire carried the promise forever. You need a home and I need a mommy.